Welcome, and in this video I will be talking about Sante Muerte. Sante Muerte translates as Our Holy Lady, is a cult image female deity and folk saint in folk Catholicism and Mexican neo-paganism, a personification of death. She is associated with healing, protection and safe delivery to the afterlife by her devotees. I'll probably butcher that name, but I'll try my best. Despite condemnation by the leaders of the Catholic Church and more recently evangelical movements, her following has become increasingly prominent since the turn of the 21st century. She has been associated with voodoo despite lack of connection. This is probably due to her similarities with Maman Brigitte, who too is also called the White Lady, and both are the culture's equivalents to the Virgin Mary, but whose origin goes far back to the Aztec culture. Originally appearing as a male figure, Sante Muerte now generally appears as a skeletal female figure clad in a long robe and holding one or more objects, usually a scythe and a globe. Her robe can be of any colour, as more specific images of the figure vary wildly from devotee to devotee, and according to the rite being performed or the petition being made. The following of Sante Muerte began in Mexico sometime in the mid-20th century and was clandestine until the 1990s. Most prayers and other rites have been traditionally performed privately at homes. Since the beginning of the 20th century, worship has become more public, especially in Mexico City, after a believer called Enriqueta Romero initiated her famous Mexico City shrine in 2001. A number of believers in Sante Muerte has grown over the past 10 to 20 years to an estimated 10 to 20 million followers in Mexico, parts of Central America, the United States and Canada. Sorry, not years, members, sorry. Sante Muerte has similar male counterparts in the American continent, such as the skeletal folk saints Sante Muerte of Paraguay and Rey Pascal of Guatemala. Ugh. According to R. Andrew Chestnut, PhD in Latin American history and professor of religious studies, followers of Sante Muerte is the single fastest growing new religious movement in the Americas. The name itself, Sante Muerte, funny if I can normally pronounce that name, can be translated in English as either Saint Death or Holy Death, although the professor of religious studies R. Andrew Chestnut believes that the former is a more accurate translation because it better reveals her identity as a folk saint. A variant of this is Santísima Muerte, which is translated as Most Holy Death or Most Saintly Death, and devotees often called her Santísima Muerte during their rituals. Sante Muerte is also known by a wild variety of other names: the Skinny Lady, the Bone Lady, the White Girl, the White Sister, the Pretty Girl, the Powerful Lady, the Godmother, the Lady of Shadows, White Lady, as many others. And I got the name wrong there as well. Has been recently suggested by some that the original Sante Muerte or Donna Sebastianiasis was in fact Donna Sebastina de Caso y Paredes, born 1626, the niece of Saint Mariana de Jesus Oqueto, 1618-1645, an Ecuadorian virgin penitent. Sebastian de Caso's birthday was August 15th, the traditional date of the feast day of Sante Muerte. She was associated with the foundation of a pious society known as the Congregation de la Buena Muerte. Dislike by that time. In the early devotional literature about the lives of the Mariana and Sebastiana, it is related the father of Donna Sebastiana attempted to force her to marry against her will, but Sebastiana prayed earnestly to the personification of death to be released from her predicament. Whew! This prayer was answered, and Sebastiania soon succumbed to a fever and passed away. A spontaneous outpouring of veneration to her then emerged among both the native and colonial peoples of Quito. After the Spanish conquest of the Aztec Empire, the worship of death diminished but was never eradicated. Judith Katia Perdigon Castaneda has found references dating to 18th century Mexico. Well, according to one account recorded in the annals of Spanish Inquisition, indigenous people in central Mexico tied up a skeletal figure whom they addressed as Sante Muerte and threatened it with lashings if it did not perform miracles or grant their wishes. Bit rude. Another synchronism between pre-Columbian and Christian beliefs about death can be seen in Day of the Dead celebrations. During these celebrations, many Latin Americans flock to cemeteries to sing and pray for friends and family members who have died. Children partake in the festivities by eating chocolate or candy in the shape of skulls. Paragon, Castadianda, Thompson, Kingsbury and Chestnut have countered the argument that Sante Muerte's origins are not indigenous, proposed by Malvido Lomenins and Christiansen, stating that Sante Muerte's origins derive from authentic indigenous beliefs. For Malvido, this stems from indigenous discourse originating in the 1930s. Nevertheless, through ethnological researches by Kingsbury and Chestnut, as well as archival work by Paragon Casadrianda, proof has been established that there are clear links between pre-Columbian death deity worship and Sante Muerte's supplication. That was a very long word to try not to cover there. As Kingsbury had pointed out, to deny the indigenous roots of Sante Muerte is to promote neo-colonialism and the denial of indigenous influences and cultures as important still in current context. In contrast to the Day of the Dead, overt veneration of Sante Muerte remained clandestine until the middle of the 20th century. When it went public in sporadic occurrences, reaction was often harsh and included the desecration of shrines and altars. At the beginning of the 20th century, José Guacharup Posada created a similar but secular figure by the name of Catrina, a female skeleton dressed in fancy clothing of the period. Posada began to evoke the idea that the universality of death generated a fundamental equality amongst man. His paintings of skeletons in daily life and that Catarina were meant to represent the arbitrary and violent nature of an unequal society. Modern artists began to re-establish Posada's style as a national artistic objective to push the limits of upper-class tastes. An example of Posada's influence is Diego Rivera's mural painting Dream of a Sunday Afternoon in the Alameda Central, which features La Catrina. The image of the skeleton and the Day of the Dead ritual that used to be held underground became commercialised, a bit like Halloween, and domesticated. The skeletal images became that of folklore, encapsulating Posada's viewpoint that death is an equaliser. Skeletons were put in extravagant dresses with braids in their hair, altering the image of Posada's original La Catrina. As opposed to being the political message Posada intended, the skeletons of equality became skeletal images which were appealing to tourists and the national folkloric Mexican identity. Veneration of Sante Muerte was documented in the 1940s in the working class neighborhoods in Mexico City, such as Topito. Other sources state that the revival has its origins around 1965 in the state of Hidalgo. At present, Sante Muerte can be found throughout Mexico and also in parts of the United States and Central America. There are videos, websites, and music composed in honor of this folk saint. The cult of Sante Muerte first came to widespread popular attention in Mexico, August 1998, when police arrested notorious gangster Daniel Arizmendi Lopez and discovered a shrine to the saint in his home. Widely reported in the press, this discovery inspired the common association between Sante Muerte, violence and criminality in Mexican popular consciousness. However, since 2001, there has been a meteoric growth in Sante Muerte belief, largely due to her reputation for performing miracles. Worship has been made up of roughly 2 million adherents, mostly in the state of Mexico, Guerrero, Veracruz, Tamaulipas, Campeche, Morelos, and Mexico City, with a recent spread to Nuevo Leon. In the late 2000s, the founder of Mexico City's first Sante Muerte church, David Romo, established that there were around 5 million devotees in Mexico Constitution, approximately 5% of the country's population. By the late 2000s, Sante Muerte had become Mexico's second most popular saint, after St. Jude, and come to rival the country's national patroness, the Virgin of Guadalupe. The cult's rise was controversial. In March 2009, the Mexican army demolished 40 roadside shrines near the US border. How rude! In circa 2005, the Sante Muerte cult was brought to the United States by Mexican and Central American immigrants. By 2012, had tens of thousands of followers throughout the country, primarily in cities with high Hispanic and Latino populations. As of 2016 to 2017, the Sante Muerte cult is considered to be one of the fastest growing new religious movements in the world, with an estimated 10 to 12 million followers, and the single fastest growing new religious movement in the Americas. Sante Muerte is a personification of death, unlike other saints who originated in Mexican folk Catholicism. Sante Muerte is not herself seen as a dead human being. She is associated with healing, protection, financial well-being, and assurance of a path to the afterlife. Although there are other deaf saints in Latin America, such as Sante Muerte is the only female saint of death in either of the Americas. Though early figures of these saints were male, iconographically, Sante Muerte is a skeleton dressed in female clothes or a shroud, and carrying both a scythe and a globe. Sante Muerte is marked out as female not by her figure but by her attire and hair. The latter was introduced by a believer named Enrique Romero. The two most common objects that Sante Muerte holds in her hands are the globe and the scythe. Pardon me? Her scythe reflects her origins as the Grim Reaper and can represent the moment of death when it is said to be cut a silver thread. The scythe can symbolise the cutting of negative energies or influences. As a harvesting tool, a scythe may also symbolise hope and prosperity. The scythe has a long handle, indicating that it can reach anywhere. The globe represents death's vast power and dominion over the earth, and may be seen as a kind of tomb to which we all return. Other objects associated with Sante Muerte include scales, an hourglass, an owl, and an oil lamp. The scales allude to equality, justice, and impartiality, as well as divine will. An hourglass indicates the time of life on earth, and also the belief that death is not the end, as the hourglass can be inverted to start over. The hourglass denotes Sante Muerte's relationship with time, as well as with the worlds above and below. It also symbolises patience. An owl symbolises her ability to navigate the darkness and her wisdom. The owl is also said to act as a messenger. A lamp symbolises intelligence and spirit to light the way through the darkness of ignorance and doubt. Owls in particular are associated with Mesoamerican death deities such as the Mictlantean Kaluti, and are seen as evidence of continuity of death worship in Sante Muerte. Some followers of Sante Muerte believe that she is jealous and her image should not be placed next to those of other saints or deities, or there will be consequences. The cult of Sante Muerte is present throughout the strata of Mexican society, although the majority of devotees are either unemployed workers or from the urban working class. Most are young people aged in their teens, 20s or 30s, and are mostly female. A large following developed among Mexicans who are disillusioned with the dominant institutional Catholic Church, and in particular with the inability of established Catholic saints to deliver them from poverty. In essence, they have created their own new religion that reflects their realities, hardships, identity, and practices, especially since it speaks to the violence and struggles for life that many of these people face. Conversely, both police forces and the military in Mexico can be counted among the faithful who ask for blessings on their weapons and ammunition. While worship is largely based in poor neighbourhoods, Sante Muerte is also venerated in affluent areas such as Mexico City's Condesa and Coyoacán districts. However, negative media coverage of the worship and condemnation by the Catholic Church in Mexico and certain Protestant denominations have influenced public perception of the cult of Sante Muerte. Here's my drink. With the exception of some artists and politicians, some who perform rituals secretly, those in higher socioeconomic strata look upon the veneration with distaste as a form of superstition. Sante Muerte is also revered and seen as a saint and protector of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender and queer and other LGBTQ plus communities in Mexico since LGBTQ plus people are considered as and treated as outcasts by the Catholic Church, evangelical churches and Mexican society at large. Many LGBT plus people ask her for protection from violence, hatred, disease, and to help them in their search for love. Her intercession is commonly invoked in the same-sex marriage ceremonies performed in Mexico. Iglesia Catholic traditional Mexico Estados Unidos, fuck that, also known as the Church of Sante Muerte, can't pronounce that, sorry, recognises gay marriage and performs religious wedding ceremonies for homosexual couples. That was a long word, that one I had to pronounce. Since the mid-20th century and throughout the 21st century, the cult of Sante Muerte and her devotees have been regularly discriminated, ostracised and socially excluded both by the Catholic Church and various evangelical, Pentecostal, Protestant churches in Mexico and the rest of Central America. The Catholic Church condemned the cult of Sante Muerte in Mexico and Latin America as blasphemous and satanic, calling it degeneration of religion. But, sorry about the eye roll, typical church. But the beautiful thing about Sante Muerte is she helps people see the natural part of death and to not fear it, or see it as a horrible thing. There's so much more we can cover on this subject, but that would take too long, and all that jazz. So, but I just want to give you the basics and the basic background of Sante Muerte. Also to note, she is seen as a reoccurring deity in the TV series Penny Dreadful City of Angels. So there you go. So if you like the video, hit the like, and if you if you haven't subscribed, then please do, because it'd be great to have you here. Until the next video, take care and be well.